Yeah, we start again.
We start again, yeah.
nhoi ho mà pa pie de ga pio cái gốc của cháu đó coi ho này mình số đó tu huê để tao này cỡ cái chế mà nhớ cái tôi nhớ con này này.
As many Paraguayans, I was not aware of the Lloreo situation. I knew very superficially what was going on with them. And then I started a research period that lasted about 3 years, where I was spending a lot of time in the Ayoreo communities in the Paraguayan Chaco. And then I met Mateo Sobo de Chiqueno in these communities, and I started a very long period of creating bonds and with Mateo and his family especially, but also with the other members of the community. And for the first 3 years of this research, I didn't record any image or any sound. It was really for me to try to understand all the complexities of the situation, and also for me to try to find what would be the right cinematographic approach to this subject.
Mà dây bìa nó này cái dây qua nó nhà nó này coi sa đa toa tiga tiga phát taga dây trabajo toga ani dây cái mà tôi ra cái tiga isa ayo di ada de to.
The tapes of Mateo came very late into my research. So what I started with was the idea of losing home by force. So this is the idea that I wanted to explore with Mateo and with the other people that I was meeting. I was interested in knowing what are cómo son las consecuencias, what the consequences are of losing home in a brutal way and not being able to recover that home again, never again. And while we were traveling around with Mateo through the Chaco, meeting other people to explore this subject, I got to know that Mateo was recording these tapes since the late 70s. When I got to know that, I knew that this was so valuable, that this audio record of the Ayoreo culture was something very rich, but I didn't know yet how these elements were going to come into place until, I don't know what was the moment exactly, but until I just decided that I was going to take the risk of focusing only on the tapes. And I was trusting that through these tapes, we were going to be able to feel all the other aspects, the political, the social aspects that are now fuera de campo, out of the field, but they still operate in the head of the audience. No, they are not explicitly anywhere, but these levels are constantly operating on the viewer.
Heda yang ai tango tungu pe ha pu ga mi mai ha ma ngan pa koi mai. Chu he ka cho no nya ma ku chao.
I always say that the director is present all over the film because he's the one who was taking the decisions from beginning till the end. So the whole piece is a statement of a director, right? But inside this constellation of things, I wanted to create like a Lichtung, and I wanted to create that space for the ayoreo to speak. And this is, for some, this can be seen as a colonial gesture. You know, I wide open the space for people to talk. But, and we can discuss these aspects, but in the circumstances of the ayoreo inside a country with that sort of government, where they have no voice whatsoever, where they were invisibilized systematically and historically, where they don't have any access to any political space. I find it very important that white people want to work in solidarity with Ayoreo. There is something very important happening right now in Paraguay. There will be the first homage to the Ayoreo people in the Congress, in the Paraguayan Congress. And we can discuss if this has any value or not, but symbolically, is the first time that the politicians that are running the country are going to invite and do homage to an indigenous person in the government, in the House of Government. It can help the ayoreo to recover some dignity, to recover some strength, to claim what is theirs by right. There is no film without the Ayoreo people, and there is no film without the situation of the Ayoreo people. So now the homage will also be to them. And this is, for me, a very good symbol for Paraguayan society.
Cái câu mà hay để ai bịa cái không biết cái con họ đồ hoa thì làm hết tiệt cho là sao vậy họ cái chi ha vô rồi cái ha đây bất kỳ cái tiệt của chạy con họ nào mà cái
You know, we cannot discuss colonialism everywhere in the world in the same way and at the same level. If we were now discussing this subject in Canada, in the United States, of course, this discussion would be much more necessary if our gestures, how colonial are our gestures now. However, in Paraguay, the situation of the native people is so in the very beginning of the fight that it is still necessary that the non-indigenous people are still helping the indigenous people to reach certain levels where they can from then on do their own fights. But until we don't reach those points, we still need to work in collaboration.
Ni kahong koi ani hoi yok yo di yok ani ni ako ga ni ta go yuku do do ga yiki go de.
The film is really about losing home. And for the Ayoreo, home, or the original home, is the forest. So the film concentrates on the people who were living in the forest, who were taken out of it, and who cannot recover it. And that's why we don't work with the new generations who were born in other places, in white settlements, and they don't know the forest anymore.
Chikon ga kucho ya ta nani kono yo ka yo do yo ko yu ko ya ma nan. Ga yiki hopi ta chikon yo hi go he ani che ha yo. Mo dio do ga a de hi ani ona to. Moi ko na changa me po pia pi ba ga. Mu he ve chia go ti. Ke ve chia ho yo di de hi do.
When we were showing the film in the Ayoreo communities just now in Paraguay, we did a tour with a mobile cinema. And the reaction after every screening was the same in different communities. And the reaction was that the film was too short for them. And this is so understandable because each of them has plenty of stories to tell. And we were discussing with them, they were asking if there will be a second part of Apenas el Sol. But I think that second part is an ayoreo part. And I think that is what we were talking about before. You create this Lichtung, and then the political space happens by itself. And I wish they are going to take the Lichtung and they will use it to create their own narrative from now on.
その通り、3問やめかい、家大、いきで。そのと、なんか、せいさもやと、へいさもやいごいで。ねはよ。
Shooting in the Chaco in those conditions is very difficult, so a lot of decisions were based on logistics. Other decisions were taken because of language, because we have to remember that we were shooting in Ayoreo, and it's a language that none of the crew was able to speak at all. Mateo speaks some Spanish, and he was our main translator, but during the main shooting periods, we didn't want to give Mateo the weight of being the translator as well as being the protagonist. It was more important to have Mateo feeling his own process as a protagonist than taking care of something technical. So we decided to have another Ayoreo translator, and he was present in every shooting day, and he would sit near the place where we were shooting with a receiver, audio receiver, and he would take notes with an estimate time code. So the small film crew that was the DOP, the sound engineer, and me, basically, we would be with the protagonist and we would shoot intuitively, having a rough idea of what the subject of the conversation was going to be. And so the whole shooting was an intuitive changing of camera position. And when we felt that the situation was over, I would go to the translator and I would read what was said in the scene that was already shot. So there I would learn what happened in the scene that was already shot. And after reading that, I could decide and discuss with Mateo which aspects I was still missing or I would like to have, and then we will create the next shooting situation. So that is important to understand. And because of the language, I wanted to have a crew that were able, all of them, to speak Spanish. So we were going to be lost in translation only once. You know, not Ayoreo to Spanish, Spanish to English or to German or whatever. So just two languages on set. At the beginning, we thought that a small camera was going to be less invasive. With the time, we realized that it doesn't matter the size of the camera, you are invading anyway. And in these conditions, any sort of camera is alien object. So in that sense, we decided to take a big camera, assuming that we were going to take the space. And we decided to shoot with anamorphic lenses. And this is because that was a political decision. The anamorphic lenses have a very small focus field, and the rest of the field was going to stay most of the time completely out of focus. And keeping the environment out of focus through the whole film, help us not to put attention on the poverty conditions and not to make a misery porn out of the film, and to try to concentrate on what is close to their faces, to their expression, to their gestures, to the territory of the body, more than the territory of the situation where they are living. And I think that was really the right decision, because we are also by that creating a very intimate situation that keep us close to the characters.
Nè, cái vậy bây giờ coi hơn rồi.
Akai yo kêu là nani
Chơi cái gì cái ngồi bài học thì.
cái hay kêu
Mà mình chỉ gọi là ta to này.
hay to do chọn đi.
Memory to me is not something that operates in the past. Memory is something that is operating in the present all the time, and is also creating future, because it opens the door to la fábula, la fabulación, no? So you are able to create imagination for the future, and this imagination for the future is not only imagination. You know, our thoughts, our processes of memory and recognizing what happened also give us hints of what could be the possibilities for the future. So that's why for me memory is so important, especially in these cases. And the other thing is that the tape as an object is important, of course, but is also an excuse to create encounter and to remember collectively, because there is something more to remember, that is to remember collectively. And I think in some societies we have lost a little bit the habit of remembering together, because memory is so flexible that the exercise of remembering together can shape our memory, can shape our sensation of the present, and can shape the possibilities we can imagine for the future. And the Ayoreo are still doing that very actively.
Yo creo que anh này cái chi episode hay anh này cái này, vậy chỗ bôi địa tiêu cái, vậy họ sẽ tích cái mà mình tao có ta cái chỗ to đấy cô, vậy chỗ mà này mà mình tao, cô hay cái đồ tới đây bài cái vậy chỗ mà mình tao.
I think it's a brutal title, and at the same time it's very poetic. It came actually from a sentence that Mateo said to me, and it is in the film now. Mateo says that the sun is the only resource that is still available to everyone, that is not privatized by the white man. And that is not a reality only for the Ayoreo. That is a reality for all of us, actually. It's also brutal, because when the Ayoreo were still living in the woods, they wouldn't suffer the presence of the sun in the same way they do now, because now there are no forests anymore. So there is no way that they can hide from the sun. So the sun, from being a very benevolent energy, became also a very destructive energy for the Ayoreo. But this is just universal. It will happen to all of us at some point. the decision of the fire at the very end is a political standing point. And I have a lot of colleagues around the world that have said, I wouldn't put the fire because it kills any possible hope. But for me, it is important that there is no hope in this film, because otherwise we were going to be saying, well, actually, Mateo can still walk into the forest. He can still go and live there, but that is not the reality. Every day, there is the size of Buenos Aires being burned. Every single day. So in a few years, there is no single space of forest to go to anymore.